Hey everyone, welcome back to Upside Down Data. Today I want to talk a little bit about why crypto is often the most exciting when it's the most boring. If you like the content, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like and follow us on Twitter. A lot of updates, better indicators, and more over there. So with crypto, there are different periods that are marked by really high levels of excitement in the market. And oftentimes those tend to be these big bull runs. So I'm showing you here the Bitcoin price on the weekly time frame. And oftentimes when you think about excitement in the crypto market, you're really thinking of these big parabolic runs, these times where price is shooting up, everyone's getting really excited, people are FOMOing into the market, there's a lot of pandemonium, everyone's talking about it, etc. But also, and especially I think more recently, as people, are tend to have this buy the dip mentality or try to, catch the bottom, like I talked about in my last video kind of mentality, there also can be excitement that comes in with these kind of capitulations. So like the March 2020 crash, or the crash that we really experienced more recently going down all the way to 17.6K last week. There's going to be a lot of excitement that comes in. People start paying attention when there's extreme volatility in the crypto markets. Because again, when it's shooting to the upside, people want to jump in to make profit. They don't want to miss out. But also when it's crashing, people are thinking, oh, is this the bottom? Can I catch the bottom and, set myself up for the long term? Now, I've talked before about how I think trying to catch the absolute bottom is a bit of a fool's errand. I'm not going to go too much into this here. Put out a video about that yesterday if you're interested in a more discussion about that. But what I want to talk about is this idea of crypto being actually, in my opinion, more exciting in those times when people aren't talking about it. Basically the idea when people are overly interested, that tends to be times where it's actually less interesting than the times when people are talking about it a lot. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I want to start off by talking about past bear market bottoms. So specifically the 2015 bottom and the 2018 bottom. So over on this chart here, I've gone ahead and just highlighted kind of the time period in which those bottoms formed until we eventually then broke out back to the upside. And you can see it took quite a long time in 2015. When we had our first kind of bottom all the way back here in January of 15, we didn't end up breaking out of this bottoming structure until October of 2015. That's going to be, around 10 months of just sideways kind of boring action. And during these times, these are not the exciting times in the market. These are not the times when everyone's paying attention, when random people who aren't necessarily into crypto are paying attention or are talking about it. These are times where most people who aren't in crypto just kind of forget about it. And even some people who are in crypto kind of decide like, whatever, they stop paying attention, not really as interested, whatever the case may be. Likewise, in 2018, this one shot up a little bit faster. This one took about 6 months. But still, from that kind of first big capitulation, it took 6 months before we started breaking back, out of this kind of structure. Arguably, you could cut it back maybe another month to say we've really broken out of it here. But still quite a while, right? And that's from that capitulation. So that's we've had this long, protracted bear market. That's 6 months or 5 months after that long bear market. And the same thing here. Long bear market, and then 10 months of just sideways boringness where people are just going to kind of forget about it. And that's where you hear about these times being called as a crypto winter. This idea that it's just not really a whole lot going on. It just gets kind of boring. It's just there's not really a whole lot going on to look at, and people just start walking away. But of course, when we look at these with the benefit of hindsight, we can see that these times right here, probably when crypto was most boring to a lot of people, when a lot of people just left it for dead, thought that it was going to zero, not paying attention anymore, or even the people who didn't think it was going to zero just stopped really paying as much attention because they've just gotten bored. It's been price going down or sideways for so long, the thought of it going back up just seems completely implausible. Same thing here. They step away. But we know, with the benefit of hindsight, that these have been historically fantastic times to be entering the asset class, right? When you're in these really boring periods, these are the times when people make outsized returns. And so if we extend that onto what's going on more recently, now, obviously we don't know if this was the bottom, and I'm not trying to claim it was, I have no idea. But let's just imagine in the best case scenario right now, let's just imagine that this was the bottom, right? What could these prior bear markets teach us about what we might have to look forward to from the bottom? Well, assuming we don't have something like the March 2020 reversal off of the capitulation, which I personally think is very unlikely given how kind of hostile the macro environment is for risk assets right now. If this were the bottom, again, not saying it was, but if it was the bottom, I think it's more likely we would do something like we've done in the past. And so let's just see what that means then if we're to do something similar to what we've done before. So let's take the 2018 example. Let's say about 20 to 24 weeks from now is how long it'll take before things start getting exciting. That would put us at the very end of the year if we were to go that way. It would be around November of this year before we'd actually break back up to the upside. And as you can imagine, going from June all the way to November with Bitcoin basically doing nothing, that would start to get pretty boring. There might just be some intermediate volatility, kind of up and down, up and down. People will get shaken out. People will just stop caring, you can imagine. Then let's imagine that this is actually more like it was back in 2015, and let's go all the way up to around 40 weeks out from here. That would be March of 2023. That wouldn't be until spring of 2023 before we'd start seeing a reversal. And again, I think especially in that case, if people have to be waiting almost a year for Bitcoin to do anything, a lot of people are just going to get bored. They're going to leave the space. They're not going to pay attention. And again, we know that if this was the bottom, not to say that necessarily is, but if it was, we would know from, after observing something like that, and especially if price broke back to the upside afterwards, people would look back and say that was the time to be acquiring. That was this massive accumulation zone. That was the best time to be acquiring before the next, potential leg up in the future. But again, it's going to be the case that not many people are going to be looking at the space with any kind of enthusiasm during that time. No one's going to be excited. The excitement from this drawdown is going to be exhausted. People are saying, oh, it's not going up. I don't know. It's probably just going to go lower again. I'm out. Same thing happened back here. Same thing happened back here. People checked out. They got bored. And then ultimately what that would mean is that people in these times missed out on these kind of well, not generational necessarily, but once in once a cycle, accumulation zones. They would have missed the boat because again, it was boring. No one was paying attention. But then of course people look back and say, oh, you were just lucky for paying attention then. And this is why I say that crypto is most exciting when it's the most boring. When you feel people just getting bored, when you feel there's just no interest in the space at all. We can also see this if we look at the volume profiles where just not a lot of activity going on. Not a lot of people are trading during these times, right? You see a lot of trading during the capitulations, but then just kind of, it's like, just no one cares anymore. Just really low volume. Just people just don't care. You get these huge spikes in volume, then just, whatever. People don't care. Goes down. And I suspect we're going to see the same type of thing happen again. We get this huge spike of volume. Again, if this was the bottom, I don't know if it is, but if this were the bottom, have this huge spike of volume, then just probably just, for a while, people just not really caring all that much about what's going on. But again, that is the time to be acquiring. It's when it's the most boring. And it's going to feel like that. You're going to see crypto Twitter really start to slow down. People aren't really going to be, they're going to move on to other things that they're talking about, like has already happened. They're going to be talking about macroeconomic things. Not going to be as much focus on kind of crypto itself. Few people are really going to be expecting any big moves to the upside anytime soon. Everyone's going to be kind of complacent. A lot of people are going to be calling for a lot lower prices. They're going to be calling, whatever the bottom looks like when we ultimately get there, going to be calling it like a bear flag, just saying that price is just going to continue back to the downside. And again, it's just going to be one of those really boring times where there's not a lot to talk about and a lot of people just end up leaving, and then, people aren't watching crypto YouTube. They're not on crypto Twitter. No one cares. And then ultimately that's going to then break back to the upside, and that's when the hype will all return. The people who wait until that happens are going to have missed the boat. And, even if you are waiting for something like I talked about yesterday with some trend indicators, like, for example, our market direction classifier and things like that, those tend to flip right around in these times. That model, it'll flip green right around towards the end of these bottom formations. And if you weren't paying attention, you'd miss it. You'd miss that very clear possible trend reversal sign that would suggest that we should be paying a lot of attention to this space. And you might not really notice it or hear about crypto until it's back up to one of these points where it might actually have been closer to a local top. So one final thing that we can just look at to kind of see this also is just some on-chain data here. This is the number of active addresses on the Bitcoin network during these times. And we can see, again, that when you're in these times, there's just not a whole lot of volatility, just kind of steady grinding in maybe one direction, more people getting in. And then you see a lot of volatility, a lot of kind of people getting in and out of the space during these bull runs, kind of a shooting up in the number of active addresses. Falls way back down during the bear market. Everyone's kind of getting bored. Not many people are using the network. Explodes again in the next bull phase, and then comes back down and while everyone's just kind of more or less bored. And again, we're kind of in that phase right now, with it just kind of, in this case, treading sideways a little bit down. And again, that's just this idea of boredom, that people just aren't going to be that excited about Bitcoin in the exact moments where historically we know they should be the most excited. So really the main point I wanted to talk about with this video is, I don't know if this is the bottom. No idea. It could be, could not be. We're going to have to wait and see. But certainly if we start to see something like this, and we start to see kind of a lot of people just getting really bored in the space, that might just be one other thing to add to the checklist. If you have a checklist of is the bottom in, this might be one other thing that you can check off your list, where if we've just been kind of going sideways in the accumulation range for months, no one cares about crypto anymore. Everyone's bored. No one's really engaging in the space anymore. Kind of ironically, that actually can be a bottom signal in and of itself. So this is just something I wanted to talk about, because I think we're going to see this play out in the coming months. I think a lot of people are going to get bored. A lot of people are going to leave. And then that's going to be the exact times when ironically, maybe they should actually be paying the most attention. And so you hear people say that, the fact that you're still here in crypto is kind of a point in your favor for the long term, because, you're at least paying attention in the times that historically have yielded the largest returns. And I think that's all coming from these ideas that most people have gotten bored and left at the exact times when they shouldn't have. And it's the people who are paying attention in these phases, the people who stay with it and keep watching it, who end up being the ones who really benefit in the next cycle. All right, if you like the content, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and follow us on Twitter. Put a lot of updates, better indicators, and more over there.